host. My name is Amal Zaidan. I'm president of BASIC, Brothers and Sisters in Christ, and we are the main host of this event. We are very excited about this. At this time, we'd like to ask all of you to silence all cell phones, electronic devices, please. We want to thank our speakers for coming out tonight. And at this time, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Pastor Rich Jensen from Hope Reformed Baptist Church in Medford. So I'll give the mic over to him.
Thank you very much. And first I want to just thank CW Post for holding this event. Events like this are very important. This is how we should deal with issues that are important in an academic sense. And so just before we begin, let me give you what the format is going to be. Each of the participants will have a 20-minute opening statement. Mr. Uvenio, Anthony Uvenio will go first, and then Dr. Karofsky. Did I say that right? Okay. And then there will be a 10-minute rebuttal by each. Then there will be a 20-minute cross-examination, and then there will be 10-minute closing statements. After that, there will be a 30-minute time for questions and answers, and we have microphones set up in each of the aisles. What we're going to do with that is we're going to alternate. So it's not first come, first served, but we want one question for one of the participants and then a question from the others. And let me give you some information now. You will have 30 seconds to frame a question. The purpose of the Q&A is not to preach, not to give your side of the debate, but to ask legitimate questions from each of the participants. So you'll have about 30 seconds to frame your question. Whoever it's directed to will have a 2-minute response, and then a rebuttal of 1 minute from the other person. And that's pretty much it. Now, just one or two points as well. Please save your applause to the end. If the participant that you are supporting makes a good point, and you start clapping and everything else, you're taking away from their time. And that's just really not a proper thing to do. And of course, there should be no outbursts from the audience if somebody makes a point that you think might be ludicrous. Please don't do that. If there's any outbursts that take away from somebody's time, I will give it back to that person anyway. So, but I'm hoping, and it seems to me that we'll have the right decorum in this setting. Again, this is an academic institution, and that's the way we want to handle a debate. Both participants know each other. They have a relationship as far as being friendly towards one another. This is not hostility here. This is really academic debate. So I think if we just hold to that, we should have a most enjoyable evening. And with that, I think we can begin. Is there anything else that... All right, Mr. Uvenio, he is going first, and he has 20 minutes to give his opening statement.
John? Good. Well, good evening, and thank you so much for all coming out and supporting tonight's debate. Thank you to the brothers and sisters in Christ and Amal Zaidan for setting up the debate, and thank you to Professor Amy for participating and Pastor Jensen for moderating. I've seen Pastor Amy debate before, and I know that she's a deep thinker. My goal tonight is to give her and you a little more to think about, to leave a pebble in your shoe, if you will. Now, I'll be taking the affirmative and defending the position that there is a God. And my personal conviction is as a Christian theist, as I do not want to misrepresent any other theistic view. Both atheism and Christian theism are worldviews. A worldview is a lens by which you view the world and try to make sense out of reality. It's my position that the theistic Christian worldview presents us with the best picture of reality that we have. It's a picture of the world the way it actually is. So as you listen tonight, ask yourself if what you're hearing reflects reality. With that said, my argument for the existence of God tonight can be summed up using the acronym CODE, C-O-D-E. CODE stands for causation, order, design, and ethics and morality. So beginning with the C in CODE, C standing for causation. You cannot have an effect without a cause. I believe the universe had a beginning and is therefore the effect of a cause. a cause much greater and larger than itself. Scientists call this the Big Bang Theory. Now, I do believe in a Big Bang. I just also believe in a Big Banger. You must, if you hold to the scientific principle of cause and effect. So I believe the universe has a beginning, and the argument goes like this. First, whatever begins to exist has a cause. Second, the universe began to exist. And third, therefore, the universe has a cause. This is known as the cosmological argument. And for this argument to be valid, we need to see if the first premise is true, that whatever begins to exist has a cause. Now, believing that something can exist without a cause is like believing in magic, where a magician pulls a rabbit out of a hat, except that there is no hat and there is no magician. And that would be blind faith. And if something can come out of nothing, why don't we see or observe this reoccurring today? There's no verifiable empirical evidence for this. Everything you see finds its origin in something else. Now, personally, I would love for some $100 bills to pop into existence in my wallet, or some hair to magically appear on my head. And stop laughing, you college students. I know that you do term papers and wait until the last minute waiting for one of those to pop into existence. However, that's not reality. Now, if simple things don't just pop into existence, how could it be true of much more complex things? Experience and scientific principle of cause and effect confirm our first premise, that whatever begins to exist must have a cause. Nothing cannot create something, because out of nothing, nothing comes. So now for our second premise. Did the universe begin, or has it always existed? Well, based on scientific evidence, which holds to the second law of thermodynamics, the universe is slowly running out of usable energy. If the universe had been here forever, it would have run out of usable energy by now. In other words, if you filled up your car with a full tank of gas and started it an eternity ago, would it still be running? No. And the same is true of the universe. It's called entropy. As we continue to lose energy, we move towards disrepair and disorder. Things break down over time. In other words, nature will take a house and turn it into a pile of bricks, but nature will never take a pile of bricks and turn it into a house. The second law of thermodynamics points us to a universe that has a definite beginning, and this has been confirmed by a series of remarkable scientific discoveries. In 1915, Albert Einstein, you may have heard of him, he presented his general theory of relativity, which supports that time, space, and matter came into existence at a point of singularity. They're correlative. Next, in 1927, scientists Alexander Friedman and George Lemaitre, each working with Einstein's equations, proposed an expanding universe based on a Big Bang theory. They mathematically predicted that the universe was expanding. Now, it sounded good, but could that be observed and proven empirically? Well, in 1929, Edwin Hubble, who has a big telescope named after him, he was able to measure the Doppler effect of the redshift in light from distant galaxies, known as the radiation afterglow. And this provided observable empirical evidence that confirmed not only that the universe is expanding, but that it came into being from a single point in the finite past. And this was a monumental discovery, almost beyond comprehension. The universe looks like a cone, and every day it gets bigger and bigger, much like my waistline around the holidays. And in reverse, it gets smaller and smaller until it's reduced to what Einstein confirmed as the point of singularity. Now, most recently, in 2003, three leading cosmologists, Arvind Borde, Alan Guth, and Alexander Vilenkin, proved mathematically that any universe which has, on average, been expanding throughout its history cannot be eternal in the past, but must have an absolute beginning. Vilenkin himself stated, "This means that scientists can no longer hide behind the past eternal universe. There is no escape. They have to face the problem," he calls it a problem, "of a cosmic beginning. Any adequate model must have a beginning, just like the standard model." So this proves the second premise, that the universe began to exist. Since both premises of the argument are true, this means that conclusion also follows and is true. The universe has a cause. And since the universe can't cause itself, its cause must be beyond the space-time universe. The cause must be spaceless, timeless, immaterial, uncaused, unimaginably powerful, and willing to create, which sounds like my definition of God. The cosmological argument shows that, in fact, it is quite reasonable to believe that God does exist. Now, you may say, well, maybe it was just energy that existed forever. Even if that were true, energy alone cannot create or cause anything without a will, mind, or desire to do so. A will and a mind imply personhood. So the energy that existed must have been personal or been guided by a person. Now, I have a suspicion that Professor Amy is going to say that this can't be true, since matter and energy cannot be created or destroyed. However, I think she would be confusing matter with mass. Mass cannot be created or destroyed. It must always reach equilibrium. Matter is destroyed in a nuclear reaction in that it is converted into energy. Matter can be converted into energy and energy converted into matter as long as they reach equilibrium. Okay, so that was just the argument for the creation of the physical universe and not biological life itself. Now, the building blocks of all life are protein molecules containing DNA, and the probability of just one of them being created by chance is 1 over 10 to the 150th power. That's minuscule, and that's a conservative estimate. Your chances of hitting lotto twice in a row is only 1 over 10 to the 15th power. If you hitting lotto twice in a row is considered wishful thinking, what would the random creation of one protein molecule be considered? The science of statistical probabilities is stacked against life coming out of non-life, or abiogenesis. Yet, the leading scientist and atheist Richard Dawkins says in his book, The God Delusion, that the universe, the existence of the universe, makes heavier demands on luck. In a nutshell, we're here by pure luck. I bet you didn't know the pure luck hypothesis was a scientific principle. Friends, the Big Bang and the creation of the universe is an empirical scientific fact, not scientific fiction. Belief in an intelligent, powerful first cause, or God, is trusting where the evidence actually leads us and is not a blind leap of faith, as some people put it. I would assert that it's a leap of faith to say with certainty that there was no cause, or that life came out of non-life, or that the universe is all that there is, or worse, that it was created by luck. So that wraps up the scene code for causation. Now for the O, which stands for order. Scientists have always believed that the world around us is comprised of matter and energy. What they're now observing is that matter and energy alone aren't all that there is. There must be the addition of ordered information to account for the design and complexities of life. So was the creation of life in the universe a blind roll of the dice? Or was someone playing Scrabble, ordering matter and energy together with information? In the absence of order, there would be complete chaos, complete randomness. The complex information and order we see in DNA alone screams intelligence, and information needs an informer. If you're walking along the beach and you see SOS written in the sand, do you elbow your friend and say, look what the waves did today? Or if you looked up into the sky and saw Eat at Joe's, would you elbow your friend and say, wow, strange cloud formation? It would be like looking at Mount Rushmore and saying, ooh, those are weird looking rocks, erosion. If looking at those simple examples suggest order, what would looking at one strand of DNA suggest? One strand of DNA contains more ordered information in it than 1,000 encyclopedias. Hardly random. But again, listen to the conclusion of the leading evolutionist and atheist Richard Dawkins. He says, biology is the study of complicated things that give the appearance of having been designed for a purpose. He admits that the complexity of cells and living organisms appears to be designed for a purpose, yet concludes that they're not. How and why does he come to that conclusion? Is he following the evidence where it actually leads? Why does he rule out a designer? If he can say that complicated things give the appearance of design but aren't, then I can say that his statement gives the appearance of intelligence but isn't. First, he posits pure luck, and now he concludes it just can't be. Those are not honest scientific conclusions. Dawkins acknowledges that living things appear to be designed but cannot admit that they are because he's biased. He suppresses the truth of the evidence and hopes that there's no designer because that would destroy his worldview. Simple patterns require simple order. Greater patterns require greater order. Either way, both patterns need someone to order them. Now, order gives rise to design, which brings us to the D in code. The argument from design is known as the teleological or fine-tuning argument. Design or fine-tuning refers to the intricate precision of nature's physical constants. In other words, the conditions necessary to account for the existence of the universe in the first place. For example, the measure of gravity has to be very precise in order for life to exist on Earth. If gravity had been stronger or weaker by 1 part in 10 to the 40th power, then life-sustaining stars like the sun could not exist, and it would make life impossible. Or, if the Big Bang had differed in strength by as little as 1 part in 10 to the 60th power, the universe would have either quickly collapsed back on itself or expanded too rapidly for the solar system to form. Again, in either case, life would be impossible. To get an idea of what 1 part in 10 to the 60th is, it would be like firing a bullet at a 1-inch target on the other side of the known universe, 20 billion light years away, and hitting that target. That there are at least 50 physical constants necessary that must have taken place for the universe to exist and for life to be sustainable. Life on Earth becomes a mathematical impossibility based on these statistics. If any one of them was off by a hair's breadth, the universe would not exist. To get all 50 is divine. Robin Collins remarks that almost everything about the basic structure of the universe is balanced on a razor's edge for life to occur. Now, I think this statistical evidence can be considered scientific and reasonable, and I think we can draw some conclusions from it. On the flip side, if the universe wasn't designed, well, then it's random. And if it's random, then so is everything else, including you and I. However, don't theists and atheists both believe that there is a way things ought to be? How can you say something ought to be a certain way unless you believe that it was designed with a purpose and a goal in mind? If random chance is the creator of life and there is no design, then there can be no way things ought. Things ought to be random, not ordered. Furthermore, if the universe is random, then science itself cannot be trusted. Science relies on the repeatability of experiments, or uniformity. The uniformity of nature is the foundation of what is constant in the universe, and it's what is relied on to make scientific predictions. How can you expect to get uniformity out of randomness? Only a powerful, intelligent, unchanging mind could give us the design and order needed to provide the foundation for uniformity. Think about it. Why would science labor and study to prove the randomness of the universe, since everything it would prove could be random and change? Anything science would prove could be relied upon because it could change randomly. Science and life itself is contingent on a uniform, orderly, and designed universe. Without uniformity, which comes from an intelligent designer, not randomness, science would be pointless. So that's the D in code, which explains design. The last letter in the acronym code is E, which stands for ethics and morality. The existence of morality, or good and evil, provides an excellent proof for God. Please remember that tonight's debate is not about whether you like my moral standard or what's contained in it. Tonight's debate is about what is your moral standard and where did it come from. You not liking my moral standard doesn't disprove God. So the E stands for ethics or morality, and it provides us a way to differentiate good from evil. Any contractor knows that when you build a house, you need a level. Without one, without a straight line, everything you do, everything you build on that foundation will be crooked, and the same is true of life. I believe that evil is a deviation from that which is good. And I will state up front that my objective moral standard is derived from God's existence. And that argument goes like this. First, if God exists, then objective morals exist. 2, objective morals exist. 3, therefore, God exists. Tonight, I'd like to know if an objective moral standard exists for atheism, and where is it derived from? Keep in mind that their standard must be physical and observable according to their own worldview. Only one worldview here tonight acknowledges an immaterial realm. Atheism, and specifically naturalism, materialism, believes only in what it can see, touch, and feel, only what it can prove scientifically or with the 5 senses. And this poses a big problem for atheists. Can they scientifically prove that a standard to measure good and evil exists? If so, please show it to me. Tell me how. And if not, then why use your own personal subjective standard for evil as a proof that God doesn't exist? Either way, I want to see your standard and examine it for myself. The atheist must presuppose a standard of morality, a straight line, a measurement for good and evil. But by doing so, they step into my worldview, which acknowledges an immaterial realm. They use an immaterial standard of morality to disprove the worldview from which they borrowed it from. And by doing so, they saw off the branch on which they sit. If you believe that good and evil exist, you must have a basis or a transcendent standard, a measurement to tell you the difference. Furthermore, if you have a transcendent standard that judges personal actions, it must come from somewhere, or more importantly, from someone. Impersonal matter and energy cannot give rise to personal laws. And here I must remind the materialist naturalist that if this is all you have, then this is all you get. The problem of evil is personal in that it is always raised by a person about a person. Without a personal transcendent lawgiver, you get no personal transcendent law. And so you could not objectively tell good from evil. All you would have at that point is your opinion. And evil wouldn't even be a problem if humans weren't so valuable. So the question also contemplates the intrinsic value of a human being who's created in the image of God. Again, where do you get intrinsic value from chemical reactions and molecules banging together? Listen to how Richard Dawkins, he's my favorite atheist, listen to how Richard Dawkins articulates the atheist naturalist position. He says this: in the universe of blind physical forces and genetic replication, some people are going to get hurt and other people are going to get lucky. And you won't find any rhyme or reason to it, nor any justice. The universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is at the bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, and no good. Nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. DNA neither knows nor cares. DNA just is, and we dance to its music. Please carefully listen to both positions tonight as we discuss these issues and take note of which worldview can account for the non-physical, immaterial realities like logic, reason, morality, and conscience, and which one cannot. Which worldview can account for the intrinsic value of a human being over and above the natural created order or animals. Please understand that I'm not saying that Professor Amy isn't moral or cannot be moral. What I am saying is that she cannot point to an objective standard outside of herself to ground her morality because that would be immaterial, something which her worldview denies. An ungrounded morality is subject to change based on the culture around or personal happiness or opinion. Again, that's not objective morality, that's subjective morality and subject to changing opinions. And if that's the case, then our lives are in grave danger right now because who decides what is good or evil? Whose morality should we follow? Mine? Professor Amy's? Mother Teresa's? Hitler's? Richard Dawkins? Is anyone's morality better than the other? Why? Okay, so I think I'll leave it at that for now. That's the acronym code that outlines 4 positive arguments for the existence of a powerful, intelligent, and moral first cause, or God, that coincides with the reality around us. Tonight, Professor Amy first has to demonstrate why these arguments aren't reasonable, and second, she has to present a more reasonable scientific alternative to my explanations. She has to prove that there is more reasonable scientific evidence to not believe in an intelligent moral first cause or God. Now, please also note that I did not use the Bible or Scripture to prove any of these points, although I could have. Neither did I say God personally told me these things. I used logic, reason, and scientific data to make my argument tonight. Well, that's about it for my time. I hope I gave you something to think about and left a pebble in your shoe.
Ready? Okay. Okay, so before we begin, I'd like to thank Amal and the Debate Club, LIU, and BASIC for hosting this debate about this very important issue. I'd like to thank Anthony for participating and helping to organize the debate, and Rich, thanks so much for agreeing to moderate. So before we begin tonight, we could do as the ancient Greeks might have done. We could pray to Apollo for knowledge. We could offer up alms to Athena to grant us intelligence and wisdom. We could sacrifice a goat to Hermes in return for good communication skills. But I'm guessing that no one here thinks it's a good idea to sacrifice a poor innocent goat. I mean, aside from being just plain messy and gross, doesn't seem to be a very efficient or effective way to go about trying to achieve good language skills. And why would sacrificing a good goat result in good communication anyway? I mean, what does killing a goat have to do with rhetoric? And why would Hermes or any god want such a thing? Yet many people in ancient Greece believed that gods and goddesses were responsible not only for knowledge and wisdom, but for good harvests and for good sailing seas. Most of the natural events, like hurricanes and earthquakes, were attributed to the wrath or anger of some god or other. Such ancient Greeks also believed that morality was ultimately rooted in and determined by the gods. Many of the myths ended with a moral. Like fables, they were supposed to help people figure out what is right and what is wrong. The actions and traits of the gods and goddesses in the stories were supposed to help people to know how to act in the right way, how to be brave and wise and kind. To many ancient Greeks then, the world, its very existence, the natural events in it, and how we should treat others was best explained by appeal to the gods. I'm going to call any worldview that includes gods or God in its explanation theistic. So the ancient worldview was theistic in this sense. And I'll call any worldview that does not include gods or God atheistic. But now notice, if you're thinking like me, and you think that it just doesn't seem to make sense to pray to Apollo and Athena for knowledge and wisdom, and it just doesn't seem rational that we'd need to sacrifice a goat to Hermes in order to have a good debate, then you know what it's like to be an atheist, at least with respect to the Greek gods. I'm also guessing that most of us here think that explaining natural events in the world by appeal to the Greek gods doesn't provide an adequate explanation. To say that Typhoon Haiyan or Superstorm Sandy happened because Poseidon was pissed off doesn't really explain why Haiyan or Sandy happened, in part because we'd still need to know why Poseidon was mad. So if you're thinking that there's a natural explanation, rather than a theistic explanation for Haiyan and Sandy, and earthquakes and rainbows, then again, you know what it's like to be an atheist, at least with respect to the Greek gods. In other words, to be an atheist is to think that an explanation of the world that does not involve God or gods is a better explanation than one that does. In general, atheists think that the best worldview is one that does not include any gods at all, including God with a capital G, that is the monotheistic God of Western religions. But some people, perhaps a lot of people here, believe that there are some aspects of the world that just cannot be explained without appeal to God. And there are three aspects in particular that people tend to point to and suggest that these can't be explained without God. First of all, many people believe that the existence of the world itself cannot be explained without God. Questions like, where did the universe come from? How did it get here? And in general, why is there a universe at all? Seem to be questions that can only be answered by appeal to God. Secondly, many also think that the general order and harmony of the universe, the fact that acorns always turn into oak trees but never into elephants, the timing of the tides, the perfect symmetry of the rings of a conch shell, the fact that the sun is just the perfect distance from the earth, giving the crops enough warmth to grow them, but not too much that it burns them up, and the fact that we have everything that we need here on earth, oxygen, water, food, chocolate, can only be explained by appeal to God's intelligent design. The fact that nature is filled with stuff that tastes good, apples and carrots and fish and meat and chocolate, and I have a mouth to put them in, and I have teeth in my mouth. I mean, think how awful it would be if I had teeth on the bottom of my feet. It would just kind of be gross, and I'm able to digest that food. And my body removes what it needs, it distributes those vitamins and minerals, sends them where they need to go, and even gets rid of the waste for me. This just all seems too perfect to have been a mere matter of nature doing its thing. All these facts, it is believed, can only be explained by appeal to an intelligent designer that is God. And the third aspect of the universe that many people think can only be explained on a theistic worldview is morality and the meaning of life. Many maintain that ethical standards like good and bad and right and wrong require an ultimate basis, and that the only basis that can provide for such ethical concepts is a necessary thinking being or God. Many also maintain that the only way to encourage people to do the right thing and to prevent them from doing the wrong thing is by having some ultimate judge who sees all that we do and who will either grant us the ultimate reward for acting in the right way or inflict upon us the ultimate punishment for acting in the wrong way. And so it is argued we could not have morality or moral people without God. And many argue that only God can provide humans with a meaningful existence. Questions like, why are we here? What is the meaning of life? What is our purpose here on earth? Are thought to be best answered by appeal to the fact that God created us with a purpose in mind, and thus giving our existence real meaning. We could include in this discussion what happens when we die, and in general, our ability to deal with death. Many people think that the only way to deal with our fear of death is by believing that there is some eternal afterlife. Our fear of dying, our fear of losing those who we love to death is best dealt with, it is thought, by believing the theistic worldview, that we will live eternally with God after the death of our bodies. All right, so remember, what we're examining here in this debate is a question about a worldview. Tonight we're considering two worldviews, the theistic worldview and the atheistic worldview, and the question is, how do we figure out which one's better? Well, it seems to me that one criterion for a good worldview is that it should be rational. And by rational, I mean that it makes sense, it's reasonable. Another way to explain rational is by thinking about its opposite, irrational. And we could say that a worldview is irrational if it involves contradictions or beliefs that contradict each other. So here's an example of some contradictory beliefs. A square has 4 sides. A square does not have 4 sides. Quite clearly, these two claims cannot both be true. If someone's worldview entailed that a square both has 4 sides and does not have 4 sides at the same time, in the same place, from the same perspective, then we'd say that that worldview is not a very good one. Here's another example. Jody is 25. Jody's only brother is 45. Jody is older than her brother. Again, this set of beliefs is contradictory. It's impossible for all these beliefs to be true. If Jody is 25, her only brother is 45, it cannot be the case that Jody is older than her brother. Now, if someone insists on holding all 3 of these beliefs, we'd be inclined to say that that person is being irrational, that she is holding beliefs that go against reason. In the case of Jody and her brother, one of the beliefs would have to be given up. Either Jody is not 25, or her only brother is not 45, or Jody is not older than her brother. At least one of these beliefs would need to be given up if the explanation of the relationship between Jody and her brother is going to be a rational explanation. It's also important to see that irrational beliefs can be bad for a person, because a worldview that involves contradictions would make it really difficult to operate. I won't be able to make rational decisions about what to do in various situations if my beliefs are contradictory. For example, say that I have a very important meeting to attend and I hold the following 2 beliefs about that location. The meeting is to be held on Long Island and not in Manhattan. The meeting is to be held in Manhattan and not on Long Island. If I really and truly believe that both of these beliefs are true, where am I going to go when it's time for this really important meeting? It seems I won't be able to act at all if I really believe that the meeting is both on Long Island but not in Manhattan, and yet in Manhattan and not on Long Island. And it seems that I'll miss this very important meeting, and that would be bad. I'd need to figure out which of those beliefs is false and give that belief up. Now notice, it can also be bad to continue to hold a belief dogmatically. That is, to hold it in spite of contradictions, perhaps because it just feels better to hold the belief. If it makes me feel better to believe that the meeting is on Long Island and not in Manhattan, because maybe I have a fear of going into the city and it just makes me feel better to believe that I don't have to go there, well, continuing to believe that the meeting is on Long Island will be bad for me if it turns out that it's really in Manhattan. So when we have beliefs about the world, it's better to hold beliefs that are not contradictory. Now, what I'm going to show is that the theistic worldview that we're considering here will result in a set of beliefs that are contradictory. That theistic worldview includes the beliefs that God is wholly good, all-powerful, all-knowing, the uncreated creator of the universe, a free being who is loving, compassionate, and worthy of worship. I'm going to show that it's impossible to hold these beliefs with respect to God and at the same time believe any of the following: that God created the universe, that God designed the universe, that God created morality, that there is pointless suffering in the world, that humans have free will, or that God has free will. So let's begin. Let's look at the world and the existence of it. Again, many people believe that the universe must have had a beginning at some point. And on the theistic account, that beginning was the moment that God created everything. The basic idea behind the belief that the universe must have a beginning is that there wouldn't be a universe unless something created it. But that same line of reasoning can be used for God. In other words, it seems that there wouldn't be a God unless something created God. However, on the theistic worldview, God can't be created. The belief that everything that exists must have a cause for its existence contradicts the theistic belief that there is nothing that causes God's existence. Let's look at the order of the universe. According to many theists, all laws of physics, laws of nature, laws of mathematics were created by God. The order of the universe is based on those laws. Now let's just say that God did create the laws of mathematics and everything having to do with math. Well, it would seem that in order to create mathematics, one of the first things that God would have had to have done is to create one, the very concept of one. And that would mean that God was not one being until after he created one. But God is all-knowing, so God must have known that he's one being before he created one. So there seems to be a contradiction here. Either God knows that he's one being before he creates one, in which case he really doesn't create one, Or God does not know that he's one being until after he created one, in which case he isn't all-knowing. So there's a contradiction in the beliefs that God is all-knowing and that God creates mathematics. Let's look at morality. Good and bad are at the very core of morality. And according to most theists, God decides what good and bad are. But notice, if God decides what good is, then before he makes that decision, there is no such thing as good, in which case it would follow that God is not good until God creates good. But now there's a contradiction. The theist wants to believe that God is wholly good and also that God creates good. But if God creates good, then God isn't good until good is created, in which case, before God creates good, God is not good, and so God is not wholly good. So it's contradictory to hold both that God is wholly good and that God creates good. Now, on the theistic worldview that we're considering, it's also the case that we'd have to take into account the problem of evil. Again, according to the theistic worldview, God is wholly good, all-powerful, and all-knowing. Now consider some of the most awful and horrendous calamities. Consider the young mother who is driving with her 3 young children, who's hit by a drunk driver, and the crash kills them all. Consider the hardworking student who's always done everything right, has always treated his parents and friends well, plays hockey, soccer, and baseball, has always worked hard in school, and even spent some of his free time volunteering at the local Humane Society, who never gets to go to college because he develops a fast-growing brain tumor and dies. Or think about the 50 young children who were gathered together in a storm center in Tacloban in the Philippines, who, when the storm surge hit, were all whisked out to sea, never to be seen again. The examples go on and on. Almost every minute, somewhere on earth, some poor young child suffers. Some good person endures some horrendous accident. Some innocent person somewhere is getting raped, tortured, or murdered. Now, if God exists, then it's either the case that God can't stop pointless suffering from happening, or it's the case that God doesn't want to stop them from happening. So if one holds that God is an all-powerful and all-good being, and that bad things happen to good people, and that in general there's unjustified suffering in the world, then it would seem that that person holds contradictory beliefs. If God cannot prevent these awful things from happening to innocent people, then God is not all-powerful. If God can prevent the awful things from happening, but chooses not to, then God is not all good. Either way, it seems contradictory to hold both that an all-powerful, wholly good God exists and that there's pointless suffering in the world. Let's look at free will. If God exists, then God is all-knowing. And most people also believe, most theists as well, believe that humans have free will, where by free will will just mean having 2 genuinely possible options from which we can choose. So if it's really possible for me to raise my left arm, and it's really possible for me to raise my right arm, and I guess even possible for me to raise both, I act freely when I choose to raise one arm or the other, or both. However, given that God is all-knowing, God must know which arm I will raise in the next moment. So here I am, I'm about to raise my arm, but God already knows which arm I'm going to raise. Well, and it looks like that arm, the one that God knows I'm going to raise, is the arm that I must raise. If God knows that I'm going to raise my right arm, but I raise my left one instead, then God is mistaken, and that's impossible. So the fact that God knows that I'm going to raise my right arm means that the only possible thing for me to do is to raise my right arm, in which case I'm not free. So either God is not all-knowing, or I'm not free. And this problem also affects the free will of God. So if God is free, and God's all-knowing, God must know what God is going to do at the next moment, in which case there's really only one possible route for God to take, namely the one route that God knows that God is going to take. And it follows that God cannot be both free and all-knowing. So it seems to me that the theistic worldview fails as a good worldview because it involves many beliefs that are contradictory. In addition to the contradictions that I briefly explained in this opening statement, there are many more examples of contradictions in the theistic account that I'm sure we'll get to explore throughout the evening. I believe that the atheist worldview does not involve any contradictory beliefs, in part because it's getting at the truth about the universe, and no account of the truth can involve contradictions. The rational conclusion, then, is that the atheistic worldview is better than the theistic worldview.
10-minute rebuttal from Mr. Uvenio, and then a 10-minute rebuttal from
Okay, Professor Amy began talking about many gods and praying to them, which confirms the premise that in all societies and all peoples throughout all time, there has been a universal belief in some kind of higher power or deity. Most people in the world today, over 75%, believe in some kind of God. Now, if she's a naturalist and you're observing nature, where does this desire or belief in a God come from? Does it evolve naturally over time? If so, isn't it a part of evolution? If not, where does this desire to worship an immaterial God come from if all we are elements banging together on a periodic table? If this was the result of evolution or nature, why would the atheist push back? The ancient worldview was theistic. Why not consider it rather than reject it? If you're in the minority, you're saying that you know what's best for the majority. If you think God is good and for the betterment of society, why wouldn't you support that? The fact they thought there were many gods doesn't disprove theism. It confirms that either it is hardwired into us or it evolved over time through nature. Now, Professor Amy says that the universe has always existed. It displays order, but it's just a coincidence, like chocolate and water and this kind of stuff. However, what Professor Amy doesn't do is ask the same question of her own worldview. When she says, well, what created God? How come God is always eternal? Well, she posits an eternal universe. Why doesn't she take that same question and use it to question her own worldview? Especially considering the scientific evidence that I've given for the creation of the universe. I want to give you another acronym called SURGE. First, the second law of thermodynamics. It tells us that the usable energy in the universe is slowly drawing out. We are going to run out of usable energy, which means that the universe had to come into existence at a finite point in time. The universe is expanding. This has been observed by the Hubble telescope that has discovered the red shift in light as the universe grows. In other words, if you were to drop a pebble in a pond, you'd see the ripples. Okay? The same thing is true of the universe. When it came into existence, there's ripples of radiation and energy that emit out from it. Okay? If you think that the universe is eternal, you could do an experiment to see if that's true. It's called an infinite regress. This is what I want you to do. I want you to start counting to infinity now, and then tell me what comes first, you finishing or your funeral. You will never get to infinity because an actual infinity in nature physically doesn't exist. Okay, R, the radiation afterglow. All right, scientist Arno Penzias discovered that the radiation afterglow of the Big Bang, it's something he won a Nobel Peace Prize for. You don't get a Nobel Peace Prize for coming up with scientific conclusions that aren't scientific. The universe is not eternal. In fact, Robert Jastrow put it this way: no explanation other than the Big Bang has been found for the fireball radiation. The clincher is that the radiation discovered by Penzias has exactly the pattern of wavelengths expected for the light and heat produced in a great explosion. Supporters of the steady state theory have tried desperately to find an alternative explanation, but they failed. At the present time, the Big Bang theory has no competitors. G, galaxy seeds. If the Big Bang actually occurred, scientists believe that we should see slight variations or ripples in the temperature of the cosmic background radiation. In 1989, the search for these ripples was realized when NASA launched a $200 million satellite called COBE, stands for Cosmic Background Explorer. And the COBE not only found ripples, but scientists were amazed at their precision. The ripples showed the explosion and the expansion of the universe was precisely tweaked to cause just enough matter to congregate to allow for galaxy formation. Any slight variation one way or another, and none of us would be here right now to tell about it. In fact, the ripples are so exact, down to 1 part in 100,000, that when the project leader, George Smoot, who's not a theist, announced COBE's findings in 1992, he was quoted in newspapers all over the world saying, if you're religious, it's like looking at God. Last is E, Einstein's theory of relativity. The theory itself, which has been verified to 5 decimal places, demands an absolute beginning for time, space, and matter. This is scientific fact. The eternal steady state theory has been eternally put to death. It's no longer scientifically tenable. Since the universe cannot cause itself, it must have an intelligent cause or a God. Now, Professor Amy also said God created math. Well, God didn't create math. Math, logic, morality is a reflection of his nature. In other words, it wasn't that God existed and decided, oh, let me create math so that I would know how to add. Or let me create logic so that I can start to think. Logic, reason, morality are a reflection of who he is. The laws of logic are universal, they're immaterial, and they're invariant. Much like my God. Universal, immaterial, and invariant. He does not change. Professor Amy brought up something, it's known as Euthyphro's dilemma. God doesn't create good. Again, good is a reflection of his nature. It flows from who he is. God is not substandard to an outside standard of morality that judges him, okay? Nor does God do something and then call it good because he did it. God's nature is good. Therefore, whatever he does flows from his nature and is good also. Now, Professor Amy keeps bringing up this word good and evil, yet she hasn't given us an objective line by which we can measure good and evil. I'm still waiting to hear that, and we're going to go through that in cross-examination. Now, she brought up natural disasters, and the typhoon in the Philippines is an issue. All natural disasters, when people die, is an issue. And I would call that evil. But how can Professor Amy call that evil? Doesn't the evolutionary mechanism of natural selection depend on death, destruction, and violence of the strong against the weak? Typhoons, hurricanes, volcanoes, and earthquakes are all perfectly natural in a naturalist worldview. On what basis do you judge the natural world to be horribly wrong, unfair, or unjust? Where does this notion of justice come from if you're just a bunch of elements banging together on a periodic table? I gotta know. Where is the line? What's the line that Professor Amy's using to determine what is good and what is evil? If she doesn't show us that line tonight, how are we ever gonna know? How am I ever gonna know what she really believes? I told her, stated up front, the existence of my morals are derived from the existence of God. Now, she's also said God is all-powerful, but he can't, if he's all-powerful, he would stop something from happening, and if he's all-loving, he would want that to happen. Well, that's not a logical, that may not be a logical possibility. God cannot freely force someone to do something, okay? The God who gives you life gives you liberty, and we do have free will. The fact that God knows what I'm going to do doesn't mean that I don't have a part in what I'm going to do. If I want to raise my right hand, I raise my right hand. Does God know it? Yes. But I also made the decision because I have a conscience. Okay? I have cognitive thinking ability. God has created me and everyone else in here in his own image, which means we have the ability to love, not love, to choose and not choose. A world without choice is a world without love. Theism fails at being good, is what Professor Amy said. And again, I'd really like to know what good means. I mean, if theism fails at being good and there's evil in the world and there is no God, what does atheism fail at? It's the same evil. Atheism would fail at being good too. When you take God out of the picture, does evil still exist? Yes. Have you lessened anybody's pain or suffering as they're going through the evil? No. Have you maybe made the situation worse and taken away their hope or the possibility of a future explanation or the possibility of any comfort derived from God? Yes. Have you taken away the possibility of any future justice for the evil or the evildoer? Yes. Taking God out of the picture makes for a much more grim world. It does not make the world a better place. Even if, and I'm not positing this, even if God was a figment of people's imagination and they found comfort in him, that would be better than no God. I want to read to you what David Berlinski, who's one of the world's leading physicists and agnostic, world-renowned mathematician, says. He asks some daring questions and answers them for us. He says, has anyone provided a proof of God's existence? Not even close. Has quantum cosmology explained the emergence of the universe or why it is here? Not even close. Have the sciences explained why our universe seems to be fine-tuned to allow for the existence of life? Not even close. Are the physicists and biologists willing to believe in anything so long as it is not religious thought? Close enough. Has rationalism in moral thought provided us with an understanding of what is good, what is right, and what is moral? Not even close. Has secularism in the terrible 20th century been a force for good? Not even close to being close. Is there a now and oppressive orthodoxy of thought and opinion within the sciences? Close enough. Does anything in the sciences or in their philosophy justify the claim that religious belief is irrational? Not even in the ballpark. Is scientific atheism a frivolous exercise in intellectual contempt? Dead on. And that's Berlinski. Time.
Okay. I'm ready. Okay, so I'd like to start just by addressing some of the points that were raised in Anthony's opening statement. So let's examine, first of all, the points that are made about C, causation. So it does seem to entail that, Anthony seems to suggest that the atheist believes that something can come from nothing. But as Anthony also agrees, it's not the case that something can come from nothing. It's absolutely impossible. But what that would seem to mean is that if there was ever nothing, there'd still be nothing now. And that's why there's always been something. There's always been a universe. It's been said a couple of times here that energy can be created and that energy can be destroyed. But it's a basic law of physics, one that is at the ultimate root of all physics, that energy can be neither created nor destroyed. And since this is all just energy, this is energy, this is energy, I'm energy. I plug my computer into the wall so it can get energy to run. I eat an apple so that I can have energy to run. That's all just various transformations of energy. And that's all there is. And that's what it is. It hasn't been created. It won't be destroyed. Some of the claims that Anthony has made about the universe, that it's expanding, are actually not correct claims. The universe isn't expanding. If it was expanding, what would it be expanding into? It can't expand into nothingness. Nothing isn't something into which something could expand. And if it's expanding into something, well, that's already the universe, so the universe isn't expanding. You see, what happens is that a lot of people confuse the Earth and the surrounding galaxies, all that we're able to study, all that we're able to see with the Hubble telescope, with the universe. But the Earth is a tiny, 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 tiny little speck in this universe. The Earth's existence is such a slight moment in the existence of this universe. And we forget that. When scientists are suggesting that the universe is expanding, they don't mean the entire universe. The scientists are talking about our known universe, the universe that we can observe with our telescopes, the universe that we can theorize about. They're talking about Earth, the solar system, and our surrounding galaxies. But the Earth, the solar system, and our surrounding galaxies are a tiny, 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 tiny little speck in our universe. We sometimes forget that. Actually, sometimes we say that we're going on a trip around the world. We're not going on a trip around the world. That would take a very long time. We would not survive such a trip. We're going on a trip around the Earth. When we're talking about the universe, we have to remember what we're talking about. We're talking about an incredibly, 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 incredibly vast place in which the Earth is the tiniest of little specks that will exist for the shortest of moments. And yes, we're here. And yes, it's absolutely incredible that we're here. But a matter of luck? No. A matter of randomness? No. A matter of something coming from nothing? No, I don't believe any of that. What Anthony has set up for you is a false dichotomy. It's either a matter of pure luck, pure randomness, or it's a matter of God. But those aren't the only two options. The universe itself is an incredible place made up of a bunch of energy. Energy abides by these basic laws of nature that Anthony himself said don't come into existence at any point. Not even God creates these laws. And what we get then are probabilities, because that's all we can do. We're finite intellects. We can work out probabilities. What would be the probability that this bunch of stuff would turn into life? It's still a probability. It's not, as Anthony said, an impossibility. We're here. It's a probability. And given an infinite amount of time, that's what there has to be if energy is never created, an unbelievably amount of stuff, that's what energy is, all those probabilities are going to play out. So we shouldn't be thanking some invisible guy in the sky for the fact that we're here. We should be so thankful that we're here. We beat the odds. Is it possible to beat the odds? Yeah, we're proof of it. That doesn't mean it happened by luck. Luck means no reason whatsoever. Randomness means no reason whatsoever. There's a rational scientific explanation for existence on Earth, for the existence of Earth. And it's all rooted in those same laws of nature, laws of physics, and laws of math that have never been created. So we have to remember when we're talking here, we're not talking about our galaxies. We're not talking about our surrounding galaxies. We're talking about the entire universe. That universe did not come into existence at any point. The Big Bang, if it is a true theory, is not an explanation for the beginning of the universe. What would have started the Big Bang? Is that how God did it? God shot off a shotgun and had a Big Bang, and now we've got this existing universe? Big Bang is probably what's going on in all sorts of corners of this universe. It is probably what formed our galaxies, our planets, and surrounding galaxies. As an explosion, we're probably reeling from them. That's what happens. Explosions, you reel and everything expands, not into nothing, not the entire universe, but the stuff that was involved in a massive explosion. Our planets are round. Why? Gravitational force, centripetal force. It ends up forming and putting us in a somewhat stable position. This isn't absolutely stable. We are going to get burned out by the sun, or we're going to get crashed into by a meteor, or we're going to be frozen to death. However it ends up, Earth is not going to last forever. If God created us, I guess we probably should hope that it did, but it's not going to last forever. That's not what the Earth is. Nothing in this world is absolutely stable, other than the fact that energy cannot be created or destroyed, and other than the fact that those laws of nature that also were not created will stay constant forever. So it's not a matter of randomness. Let me take up the issue of design. I mean, it would seem that if we have a well-designed planet, a well-designed universe, that it would have had to have had a designer. I'm not buying that story either. And it makes me wonder, if God's so well-designed, who was God's designer? If he's such an intelligently ordered supreme being, who designed God? And now notice, too, that although Anthony says that good and evil did not need to be created by God, well, that would seem to suggest then that we don't need God. We have good and evil. Just as we have the laws of nature, just as we have the laws of mathematics, we don't need God in order to have good and evil. And he does keep asking me, well, what's your explanation? I don't think it's really all that difficult. I think we're, all of us, hoping for a common thing. We're hoping to be happy. And what else do we do all our things for? We work so that we have money, so that we're able to feed our kids, so that we have happy families. We educate ourselves so that we can learn more, so that we can live in this world comfortably and be happy. We go out, we play hockey with our friends and have a good time so that we can be happy. It's the common element in all of us. No one had to give us that ability. It's what we want to do. And we don't like pain. Pain sucks. Pain hurts. So it's really kind of easy. Goodness comes in the fact that we want to be happy and we want others around us to be happy. And in order to do that, we need to treat others well. It's pretty simple. We want to avoid pain. We want others to avoid pain, so we shouldn't hurt people. It shouldn't be the case that we need some textbook or some supreme being to tell us that we shouldn't hurt other people. We don't need that. We can figure out what we like. We like to be happy. And figure out what we don't like. We don't like pain. And figure out from those two very basic natural laws that we should treat others as we want to be treated, that we should help others be happy too, and that we should avoid causing any pain to anyone. That would be as an objective a moral code as you could possibly have. So logic, reason, and mathematics, they don't come into existence. Good and evil, they don't come into existence. Our universe is just a bunch of energy. It seems crazy, I know. It's unbelievable that I could form words, send them through this microphone. You hear them. Your brain is able to process them. You're able to understand them as much as you can, and as much as I can clearly explain the words that I'm trying to get across. And we're able to communicate. That's absolutely unbelievable, but it's not something that had to have been created by any intelligent designer.
Now there'll be a 20-minute cross-examination. Mr. Uvenio will begin. He'll take the affirmative on this. And they're going to sit down for this portion, and I'm going to move back out of the line of fire.
Okay, let me plug. Okay.
All right, Professor Amy, I just got a quick question. I want to clarify something. You believe that nature is all that exists, correct?
Nature is all that exists.
Okay. Only knowable through the five senses or scientific experimentation?
No, I don't think that's the only way we know it.
How else do you know?
By means of reason.
Isn't reason material, immaterial?
Is reason material or immaterial?
Yeah,
I guess I
well,
guess I would have to say I'm not exactly even sure what that would mean.
Okay.
It's a process. Reason is a process.
Right. Is it a physical process?
Yes, it's a physical process.
Reason is a physical process using the laws of logic?
You reason according to the laws of logic.
Right. So the laws of logic govern reason and thought.
Yeah, they either govern them or explain them. I think that they may be explainers of good reason.
Are the laws of logic material or immaterial?
Again, it's kind of a confusing question. It's not like they're one or the other. So you're asking me if it's this or that, but it's not really so much material or immaterial. The laws of logic are descriptions. As I'm trying to describe this to you right now, it's a description. Is that physical or not physical?
Well, you're using an immaterial law to tell me. You're using an immaterial law to tell me that it can't be both material and immaterial. Correct?
Yeah.
The laws of logic offer an excluded middle. It can't be one. It can't be both this and that, and not the other. So what you just said is a logical fallacy.
Well, it's an interesting point to make, and I understand what you're trying to say, but to say that it has to be one or the other is not really true. It just means that they can't be both. I mean, are the laws of logic purple or not purple?
What's the third option? If it's not material, immaterial, what's the third option?
They're abstract.
Right, immaterial. Abstract things are immaterial.
They are immaterial, but it's not in the same sense that you're saying. I mean, I don't think I would necessarily suggest that abstract is the opposite of being material.
Okay, but abstract is still immaterial in that you can't see it, touch, or weigh. Can you weigh an abstract, whatever?
Nope.
No, okay, so it doesn't have physical properties.
It doesn't have physical properties in that sense.
It has immaterial properties. Now, how did you come to know that the laws of logic exist?
How did I come to know that the laws of logic exist? By means of reason.
So you use the laws of logic.
That's correct.
To determine that the laws of
that's correct.
You don't consider that circular reasoning?
No, I don't.
Okay,
I don't know how else you would reason without laws of logic.
I agree with you.
Yep.
Okay, so you're using an immaterial law of logic to disprove God, who's immaterial.
Well, again, you keep kind of imposing on me the view that the laws of logic are immaterial, and I'm just not so sure that I agree with that.
Okay. I'm asking you, what would they be if not immaterial?
And I'm saying they're abstract descriptors of what we're doing.
Which are immaterial. material. Okay,
Okay.
we'll go on to something else. I'm immaterially confused at this point. All right, here's a better question. Is morality objective or subjective? In other words, does an objective standard exist to measure good and evil by?
Okay. I'm actually really not so sure where I stand on that. I can imagine a really compelling account that suggests that morality is objective, but I can also understand a really compelling account that morality is subjective. I teach philosophy, and this is one of those issues that I tend to kind of go back and forth on.
Okay, so does true evil exist? In other words, is anything truly evil in and of itself, regardless of popular opinion? For example, is torturing babies for fun pure evil?
Torturing babies for fun is evil. Would I call it pure evil? I mean, I just don't know what pure is adding to it, so I would say it's evil.
Okay, it's evil. Even if 51% of society decides torturing babies for fun is okay?
Yes.
It'll still be evil? What if 100% of society says torturing babies for fun is what we want?
Is
Would
what
it
we want?
still be evil?
I would think it would be.
Okay,
But
so-
then, of course, you're asking me, and I'd be part of that 100%, so I guess I'd be saying it's not. So so 99.99999%. I'd be the only one that would say that was, okay, so then yes.
Even if the whole world, but let's say you and I decided torturing babies for fun was okay, would that make it right?
I wouldn't be part of deciding that was okay.
It's hypothetical.
It's hard for me to engage in that. I guess if we had gone to that point, we would say it was okay, right? But I can't even imagine putting myself in that situation where I would think that it was okay.
My point is, it's going to be wrong regardless of what popular opinion says. It's going to be wrong in all societies and all times throughout eternity, which means it's objective.
Oh, it's objective in the sense that it's what again? How are you defining objective? I'm sorry, I didn't realize where you were going with that.
Invariant, universal, and forever.
Okay, I'll
Like
accept that.
logic.
I'll accept that.
Okay,
All right.
so then some form of objective morality must exist in order for us to say that would be evil forever.
Yeah, that's the line that supports it. That's the line that I follow when I'm thinking that morality must be objective.
I think you're on the right track.
All right, I'll accept that. I said I do find it a compelling account.
I'm with you. I'm thinking we just.
I know. That's the compelling line for it. I agree.
We have to determine where do these objective laws of morality come from. I know you say they don't have to come from anywhere,
Yeah.
but a personal law has to come from a person. Before you asked, and it's really telling, you said, who designed God?
Yeah.
Intuitively, you said who, not what. Because you know, a person with intelligence creates something else.
No, I said that because I was using your own theory. I was using your own premises. You suggested that order needed an intelligent designer, and I suggested that an intelligent designer would need an intelligent designer as a way of refuting your claim that order needs an intelligent designer. So I wasn't trying to support the claim that order needed an intelligent designer.
If your intelligent designer is eternal, anything that comes into existence needs a cause. Anything that exists eternally doesn't. You say that the universe existed eternally.
Yep.
Okay, but then you say, who created God?
Right, but that was
Why?
because I was working off your basic premises that you were suggesting that there was a God. So using my premises that the universe is eternal, there is no God, there's no intelligent designer.
Okay, so if evil exists in the sense that we can't torture babies for fun, it's a matter of truth and not taste. It's objectively wrong to do this regardless of opinion, which means that there is a standard to measure good and evil.
I'm sorry, we were talking about some microphone problem. Can you repeat that?
Sure.
Is there a problem?
Put you in the middle.
What's that?
Put the mic in front of you in the middle. Her mic.
Her mic?
Yeah, put that in front of you in the middle. Thank you. That's
Right there?
Okay,
Oh,
thanks.
okay. All right, I stopped it
Okay.
so that,
Sorry about that.
go ahead.
Don't be silly. If torturing babies for fun is evil universally forever, okay, and it's objectively wrong, there must be a standard to measure this good and evil. There must be a line. You like hockey, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You know the blue line?
Yep.
Right? You can't if the guy crosses over before the puck does, he's offsides.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There has to be that in order to have good and evil. There has to be a blue line to say yes, it's evil or no, it's good. My question is, you intuitively know that. I believe it's hardwired into us by God. Where would that come from if all we are is elements on the periodic table banging together?
Well, you're kind of giving me it's kind of a non-genuine question. You're suggesting that they did come from somewhere. So you're asking me where they came from, but I don't think they ever came into existence. So it's a question that I can't answer. It's a non-genuine question.
So
it's like my asking you, how many times did you beat your dog yesterday? Well, you can't answer the question, right?
If you had asked my cat, it'd be...
No, that's evil. See, that's evil.
According to you.
Hold it close.
See, because what'll happen is this. We might as well be debating whether you like Butterbean Canyon or I like Rocky Road, which is better, because it's a matter of taste, not truth. What I'm trying to say is objective morality is a matter of truth.
Yep.
Okay. Now you said objective morals don't come into being.
That's
I
right.
agree with you. They're eternal.
Yep.
But if they're eternal, where are they derived from? If the universe is eternal, how can objective morals be eternal when no one existed on the planet 10 billion years ago?
Yeah, I agree. You know, these kinds of things are not going to be applicable when there are not conscious human beings or thinking rational beings. I mean, for all we know, there may be other rational beings out there in the universe. We're not necessarily the only rational beings, but you're right. They're not going to be applicable unless there are conscious beings, rational beings that are in societies.
Okay, so it's possible that there's an ontological referent called God from which we would derive an objective moral standard.
No, I don't think that's possible. And I don't think that they're derived. Even if there are no humans, that doesn't mean that good could be bad. It just means that the basis and the laws of morality are not being applied at that point in time.
Okay, all right. Let's say whatever the morality is, whether it's objective or subjective, it would have to be for the betterment of society. And anything that opposes the betterment of society or people's happiness would be wrong, correct? Okay. When you observe nature from primitive humanity on through to today, throughout all ages, primitive societies, Egyptians, Incas, Mayas, all peoples and all societies, most of the people, over 75% of the world today, believe in some kind of higher power or deity. There's a universal belief.
Yeah.
Doesn't it follow...
Oh, it's not a universal belief.
No, not unanimous,
right.
but universal in the
belief.
sense that worldwide. Doesn't it follow naturally, based on empirical evidence, that if this is how society has flourished and prospered since life first began, even surviving through severe persecution at times, that it's for the betterment of society to believe in God?
No, actually, the happiest countries are, and the most flourishing countries right now, and among them are like Denmark and Sweden. They are the happiest countries, they're the healthiest countries, they are the most flourishing countries, they are the countries with the least amount of crime. So actually the countries, and you know, you're right, I mean, we have had mostly religious countries for the history of the earth. So we have now, you know, more recently, many more countries that are atheistic. And when we look at those countries, we find that they're the happiest, the people are the best behaved, they have the least amount of crime, and they're the most flourishing. So no, I don't think that theism is necessary for a flourishing society.
Okay, so as an atheist, you're in the minority of humanity. Are you saying that you know what's best for the majority of the people?
Yeah, I can tell you one thing. I mean, I think it's best for the majority of people that we operate on reason. I think it's best for the majority of the people that we don't hurt each other. So, I mean, in that sense, I think I can say some things about what's best. In terms of the belief about theism and atheism, I do think that atheism, as a rational explanation, is better for people.
Okay, so are you saying that tonight I haven't used reason or logic to go to debate with you?
I think you've tried to, but I think that as, you know, just merely putting forth a bunch of facts and trying to put them together, it's using reason, but it doesn't mean that you're using it well.
Okay. If it's the predominant view, and for the betterment of society, that if believing in God is the predominant view and for the betterment of society, in other words, it might bring hope and comfort, wouldn't it be inconsistent to tell people that God doesn't exist based upon your own worldview and the happiness of other
Oh,
people?
but look, you're not suggesting that God does exist. You're just suggesting that people should believe that God exists. That's a very different thing than we're talking about. I mean, tonight we're talking about whether or not God does exist.
Right. And you're
At a
telling
different point, should people believe that God exists? I don't think they should. I'm not about to tell somebody who, a mother who has lost her, daughter that, and is finding all her comfort in believing that her daughter is with God. I'm not about to tell her, you can't believe in God, I know it's better for you.
Okay.
But that's belief in God. That's not saying that God does exist.
Right. So do you recognize that you're putting your happiness above the happiness of the majority of the world? In other words, now all of a sudden, it's not about everyone's happiness. It's about Amy's happiness and Amy's point of view being imposed on the rest of the world.
I guess I'm a little confused. I don't feel like I'm imposing my beliefs. I do think that atheistic worldviews will result in a happier state and societies that get along better and societies that treat people better. But I guess I don't really feel like I'm imposing that belief upon anybody. I'm merely suggesting that that would be the case.
Do you realize, I mean, you know in atheistic societies such as Stalin, Hitler, Mao Zedong, Pol Pot, they outlawed the belief in gods. Joseph Stalin torched and burned down over 50 to 60,000 churches.
Yep.
In a purely atheistic worldview.
Yep.
So, I mean, it could lead that direction too. And in that case, Mike makes right. His happiness was predominant and would prevail. I mean, you and I, if you decided your happiness was best, I think I could take you in a wrestling match. But if it was somebody much bigger, I'd have a problem, and I either submit and comply, or I'm done.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if there's a question there, but since the Hitler, Stalin, Pol Pot, Kim Jong-il, all those guys always get thrown into this type of debate, I'd like to address it.
Sure.
None of those guys did what they did in the name of atheism. They did what they did mostly in the name of communism. Atheism was a particular belief that rode alongside communism, but what they did was not in the name of atheism. Hitler certainly didn't do what he did in the name of atheism, otherwise he wouldn't be killing just Jews. You put on top of that the crazy number of wars that are throughout the history of the earth, that are going on right now, all in the name of religion. Terrorism in the name of religion, the Inquisition in the name of religion, the Crusades in the name of religion. To name 5 guys who happened to be atheists, but who did what they did as a result of communism or really misguided beliefs, and say that all atheism and atheistic countries are going to result in that, is mistaken. Again, look at Sweden, look at Denmark, look at the countries that exist right now that are atheistic, and they are at the top in every category that would be desirable for a country.
I'm not saying that atheism caused that, okay? But their personal happiness is what was the overriding factor. Now, you pointed out that there's been wars, the Crusades and the Inquisition. The Crusades, there's about 350,000 people killed. The Inquisition, about 2,500. Let's say through terrorism and all these other religious wars, let's make it 2 million people were killed. If it's one, it's one too many.
Okay.
Stalin, Pol Pot, Mao Zedong collectively killed 130 million people based on their own happiness, following that dictate. Would you say that's dangerous if they decided their happiness was best for the rest of society?
All right. So
if their happiness, if the point of their worldview was pursuing their own personal happiness, and it led to the widespread slaughter of over 130 million people, according to your worldview, you said happiness is the point. Happiness is the point of my worldview.
Yep.
So if happiness is the point of Joseph Stalin's worldview, and it includes killing 50 million people, how could you say he's wrong?
Well, again, that's a hypothetical. You're assuming that
No, I'm taking your worldview and...
Joseph Stalin did not necessarily act on his happiness. I mean, I don't think that what he was doing was pursuing happiness.
Okay. What was he pursuing?
I don't know what he was pursuing. Whatever he was pursuing, it was wrong.
So it could have been, how do you know it's wrong?
Because he killed an awful lot of people.
Why is killing is natural? That's evolution.
Killing is natural? It's
Yes.
evolution?
That's how we got here. We are here, but we are
if we
the
all
products.
killed each other, we wouldn't be here.
No. We are the product of many wars to get to this place where we're at right now.
So that's a good thing, the
No,
wars?
I'm not saying it is. You're saying it's evil, and I'm saying how. What's your objective line? You told me it was happiness.
Yeah,
I
it
showed
prevents a
you-
lot of people from pursuing their happiness, and it makes a lot of people unhappy. Look, if we really thought that killing was a good thing, we wouldn't be here. We would all be dead. We would never have, none of our ancestors would have survived.
I agree with you. I
Right?
agree with you. Okay.
So by evolution, what happens is that we recognize that we're happier and flourishing societies.
Okay. Want to switch topics real quick. Every 7 years, every cell in our body dies
Yep.
and is replaced with a new one,
I've heard that too.
right?
Yeah.
In a naturalist worldview, does that mean I'm a different person every 7
Yeah,
years?
that's a really good question. I know, it's a really, really good question. The problem of personal identity is such a crazy one.
I thought it was
And
too.
if you want, you could offer a physicalist account still that would allow for something like personal identity. And that would just be that you have a physically continuous body. It's not like every 7 years that your cells just disappear and then all of a sudden you get new ones. It's something that happens in a process over time. And so as long as you have a physically continuous body, then you can say that you're the same person. Are you one and the same person? I'm not even sure that anything is. This table has just changed because I did that. And in that sense, it may not be absolutely identical with the table that was here before I did
So
that.
what is it inside the person that makes them?
It's the
same
physical
person?
stuff. It's the continuous physical
But
stuff.
it's not the physical stuff because every cell dies.
No, again, not all at once. I mean, if my
Right.
body, all at once, all the cells just died, and then a whole bunch of new cells just started up, I would say you're right. Then you can't have any sort of account of personal identity. But it's not how it happens, right? My cell, it does it continuously over time.
Mm-hmm.
Some cells die and they're replaced, and other cells die and they're replaced. But I've got a continuous living body, which seems to amount to a single person.
Okay, I think we're done.
Yep,
Good enough?
that's time.
Okay, my
Ready?
turn?
You
Okay,
ready?
yep.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So, Anthony, do you believe that Zeus exists?
I don't.
Can you prove that he doesn't exist?
I don't have any positive proof to the contrary, and I have no personal testimony to the fact that Zeus does exist. Nobody has testified that Zeus has changed their life. There hasn't been a long line of people who say, I've encountered Zeus.
Yeah. So that would be proof that Zeus doesn't exist?
That would be proof if there was positive proof in the sense that many, many, many people have come into contact with the same person. Then I would say, okay, there's a possibility that that person exists. When I look from a Christian theistic worldview and I see the person of Jesus coming to earth as a man, he's a historical figure that many, many people attest to. Even there's extra biblical sources that point to his existence, his crucifixion, his rising from the dead, him claiming to be God. I would have to say he's got something to him.
He's got something to him, but
Right.
maybe not God.
Well, I look at like we're in the year 2013, right?
Yeah.
What happened 2013 years ago is what I want to know, that we started numbering the years 2013.
Actually, it wasn't 2013. Didn't Bede start it in 1400s?
Well, no, that
The
was
numbering of the years?
No, actually,
And
that was
started and kind of just guesstimated that Christ was born around this time. That'll be good enough for Zeus.
his actual birth is estimated within, I think there's 3 or 6 years that it could be off. But it seems like it's taken off, huh?
It seems like it's taken off.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah,
you
huh?
know, I don't know if it
It
was a
seems-
hoax. If it was a hoax, somebody might have said, hey, we shouldn't do this. But I don't know. Every year I watch Dick Clark's Rock, Roll, and Remember, and they're celebrating 2013 every continent. I'm thinking,
Oh, so the counting of the years has taken off.
yeah,
Oh, yeah, sure, that works.
Yeah.
But yeah, that started in 1400 that we designed the calendar.
that's
That was like 1400 years after Christ's death. How did they get that so close and so right? They weren't around. Can you try and remember what was happening 1400 years ago?
Well, personally, I know there's historical record that show when he lived. Okay, we have verifiable evidence, manuscript evidence showing his death, burial, and resurrection, and they calculated it from that. My point is this: if it was started by one guy in his room, how did everyone else come to accept this as true fact?
The funny thing is that it was started by a whole bunch of different guys at a whole bunch of different times. And the text is filled with contradictions, right? I mean, the stories that are told have different facts and different explanations. And
Which stories are you talking about?
I can tell you the stories that I have. Hold on. Let me get back to you on that one, because I got to dig through my papers. Hold on. Let me see if I can find it quickly. No, I have other contradictions in the Bible, but I don't have the contradiction in Christ's story. So we'll skip over that for a bit. In any case, the stories have been translated and retranslated. So to think that the mere fact that we've got a story about a guy, no proof that he's God, doesn't mean that he is God, right?
Is that a question that I can
Yeah,
answer?
it's a question.
All right, well, we have over 27,000 manuscripts of the New Testament, okay, copied and recopied and compared to each other. It's called textual criticism, okay? And within a 2% variant, we have these textual copies from different places in the world that all match. And then we
Okay.
have the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls that confirms that those things have lined up.
So let me
And-
ask you something. Is everything in the Bible, that the Bible says, is everything in the Bible true?
Well, listen, again, we're not here to debate what my standard says. The fact...
I'm
hold on,
just
the fact-
asking about
no,
the
no, no,
Bible.
no.
Is
I believe-
everything in the Bible true?
I believe it is. Now,
So if the Bible says that we can allow fathers to sell their daughters into sexual slavery, is that acceptable? Is that moral?
okay, what's happening is you can take a sliver of a verse or a paragraph and not understand the full context.
Oh,
If I- hold on,
wait,
hold on,
no.
let
So
me
tell me
finish.
the full context
Let me-
that allows a father to sell his daughter into
I'm
sexual
not
slavery.
saying that it's right, but let me explain.
So it's not right.
Hold on, let me explain. If I told you that a man threw shackles on a woman and threw her into a car and drove away, would you say that was good or bad?
You're not questioning, I'm questioning.
All right, I'm trying to explain.
So I'm asking you.
So what I'm saying is
it-
when you understand and you read the Bible cover to cover and understand context,
Yep.
okay, that is not, the conclusion you're coming to is not the conclusion that the bulk of Christians today are coming to. So that just tells me that you might be misreading something that we're not.
Leviticus 25:44 tells us how we're supposed to buy slaves and how we can inherit them.
Again,
How is
this-
that being misread? Is it okay to have slaves?
This would
Do
be.
you think it's all right to have slaves?
Allow me to finish.
Yeah.
This would be a great topic for another debate. If you could produce your objective standard of morality, then I could read through it, I'll compare it to mine, and then
It's
we
actually
can-
just a simple
you not-
question.
you not-
I get
hold
the
on, you
feeling
not-
like maybe that you don't want to answer it.
Not at all. You not liking my moral standard doesn't disprove God. That's not the topic
I'm
of
not
tonight's
trying to
debate.
disprove God. I'm actually just looking at some biblical support for it.
I understand, and I'm claiming that you're reading certain things out of context. From cover
So
to
the
cover,
Bible isn't the Word of God?
cover to cover, you're coming to a much different conclusion than Christians do.
Because there's ways to interpret the Bible
Yes.
differently?
Yes.
So if we can all interpret the Bible differently, doesn't that seem that there's a problem then with the Bible being the word of truth and the word of God?
I don't
Why
know.
wouldn't God just have us all read it the same way?
I don't know, it seems like the same problem we have interpreting scientific data. When I showed you that the universe was started through a big bang, you're discounting that and all the proven scientific data that points to that.
Yeah.
So I guess it depends on what scientific denomination you belong to.
Okay. So now, do you believe in hell?
I'm sorry?
Do you believe in hell?
Again, I do believe in hell, but that's not the topic for tonight's debate.
It is kind of, because it's helping me to understand your theistic worldview.
Okay?
So if someone tortured an innocent child, would they go to hell?
Again, there's so many different ways to answer that question. Does that person is going to have to stand in front of God and give an account for what he's done. But on the flip side, if somebody in your worldview molests and rapes a little girl and gets away with it and dies, there is no ultimate justice. They get away with it.
Okay. So if we're going to... I don't even want to go here, but we have many people who, in the religion that you belong to, who have raped and tortured young children.
That doesn't make it right.
Right.
It doesn't matter what religion they belong to. You
But
don't
how
think,
is that
hold on a second, you don't
possible?
think- you
I
don't
mean,
think-
really, how is it possible that you could be a Catholic priest and yet still hurt innocent children?
Again, if you would have read the New Testament, there are many people who name the name of Christ who are not Christians.
So
They
they're-
are actors. They
Okay.
act like Christian, or make believe that they're Christian, but they're not.
Why would God allow them to
Conversely-
do that?
I'm not done, let me finish.
Yeah.
Conversely, are you telling me there are no atheists that have raped and molested?
Didn't
or-
suggest that. I never
Okay,
said that.
Okay, so the same evil exists in your worldview with no way to reconcile it.
Yes, but your worldview includes a God that
Yes.
has these people walking around claiming that they're working in His Word, claiming to do His job. Why wouldn't He stop them?
Well, there's reasons why God does and doesn't do things, okay? If you believe that God is powerful enough to stop them, you also have to believe that He's wise enough to know what's best for society.
So what reason would He have for allowing priests to molest young children?
The reasons behind what God does are not necessarily revealed to us. However, we do know we have the hope of eternity. There is going to be an ultimate judgment for evil, and there's going to be a consequence for evil. But again, in your worldview, there is no consequence for evil. It just goes without consequence. And it seems like you're upset, in my worldview, that there would be a consequence for evil.
Well, part of what worries me is that it seems that sometimes people do the right thing just to get to heaven.
The motives of their heart are going to be judged by God. We can't say, there might be people who you want to call them posers, they think they're going to work their way to heaven. That's not the Christian gospel.
And acting just out of fear of going to hell, they don't do what they do with a fear to go to hell.
It's possible. Again, I don't know why people do certain things.
Yeah,
I
but you
mean,
can see that if they do act just out of the fear of God, that they're not really acting morally in that case, right? They're just acting out of the fear of...
Again, my worldview is the only one that can substantiate evil. You don't have an objective standard, so in your worldview, it's a matter of taste, not truth.
So now let's
So
go on to...
hold on, if the rapist is happy raping the woman...
You're putting words in my
No,
mouth.
I'm
That's
taking- I'm
unfair.
ta- I'm not
Yeah,
taking-
no,
no,
this
no.
is unfair. I'm going to go on to another question.
Hold on, I'm taking your view to its logical
You're
conclusion.
not. That's not what I said.
You
That's
said
not what I
happiness
said.
is the point.
Yes.
Right, and if the rapist is happy in doing what he did, I'm not saying that you would say
Yeah.
it's
All
right.
right, so you want... let
I'm
me
not
explain.
saying that you would say it's right. That's
Yes.
not what I'm insinuating.
Yes.
I'm insinuating that his personal happiness, he would think it's right.
That's right. And
Right.
he could be mistaken, right?
Thank you.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. There are people who could be
Absolutely.
mistaken thinking they're Christians
Absolutely.
and acting right, but they're not. Same as
My
in your
concern
world.
is that if they're thinking that they're Christians and they're not, and they are acting under this all-powerful, all-knowing being, he would stop that. That's
No,
that's not a question.
You have the satisfaction of knowing that there will be a consequence for their evil, but not in your worldview.
Do you think we have free will?
I do, to a certain extent.
And
We're
can you
bound-
explain what that means?
Okay, we're bound to our natures. In other words, if I decide I'm going to fly, it's not going to work because I'm a
Okay.
human being.
So what does having free will mean then?
Free will means I have the ability to choose, the ability to choose to love or not to love. I have a conscience. Con means with, science means knowledge. I'm born with knowledge. I can choose to do right or I can choose to do wrong.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a real simple choice, right? And just a moment, ready? I'm going to ask you to raise either your right hand or your left hand. It's going to be your choice. Now, before I ask you to make the choice, let me ask you this. Does God know which hand you're going to raise?
Sure.
All right, go ahead and choose. Choose to raise either your right or left hand.
I'm choosing not to raise either.
Did God know that you were going to do that?
Sure did.
And did you do it freely?
I did.
So how is it possible if really free choice means that you have two genuine possibilities? That would have had to have meant that it was genuinely possible for you to raise a hand.
Right. Again, from my perspective looking up, okay, I'm free to do what I want. From his perspective looking down, he knows the end from the beginning.
So then you
It's-
don't have genuine
it's-
possibilities.
No, I do. It's called compatibilistic free will.
And which
Okay.
isn't, then it's that which, that doesn't involve genuine possibilities.
Sure it does.
No, compatibilistic free will
No.
is only one possibility, and you call it free because it results from your want, wish, or desire. That's compatibilistic free
It's
will.
free from our point of view, different than God's point of view.
No, that's not compatibilistic free
You're
will.
trying to humanize a God. You're trying to say that we don't have free will because because of him, because he knows.
No, I'm saying that you've changed your definition of free will. Initially, you said that free will was having two genuinely possible alternatives. You could raise your right hand, you could raise your left hand, or you could raise both.
You have choice to love, choice not to love, choice to do right, choice to do wrong.
Then that's actually not the same as having genuine possibilities, and it's actually not really free will. It really means that you don't have the choice. You act on your wants, wishes, and desires, but if choice means two genuine possibilities, you're not really defining free will in that way.
So are you saying your worldview has free will?
You're asking the questions now. I'm going to continue if that's
I thought it was
okay.
conversational.
Okay. Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah. Actually, my worldview doesn't have free will.
Because I'm thinking if your worldview doesn't have free will, then how could you hold somebody accountable for evil if they did it? You keep complaining about evil, but if they can't do otherwise, why are you going to punish them for that?
Yeah, that's the classic question for determinism.
Right.
But you got to understand that, see, we're social beings. We live in societies. We flourish better when we live together. We flourish better when we get along. If we're all killing each other, our society is not going to last very long. If we're robbing and lying to each other, we're not going to get along very well. We like to be good to each other so that our societies flourish. When there's somebody in our society who's being a jerk, we got to do something about it, or else it's going to be difficult for us to do what we want to do and difficult for us to be happy. So although that person may not be able to control it in the sense of free will, in the sense of having genuine alternatives, we can still do something about it to make our society a better place.
But you're not free in that sense
Nope,
to do
you're
it.
not.
Okay.
But neither are you. See, your account actually coincides with mine. Compatibilism is the view that everything that happens in the only way that it can happen. There's no genuine possibilities. That's the compatibilist view. But the compatibilist says we still have free will whenever we act according to a want, wish, or desire. So my heart beating, my lungs doing what they do to get the air in and out, my sandwich digesting, none of that is free, but no one really thinks that it is. It happens as a result of natural causes.
Okay, and this
All of your actions, if you're a compatibilist, happen just that way too.
And how
But
does this
you
prove
call
God?
an act free when it's a result of a want. So you actually have the same worldview that I do. You're just calling an act free when it results from what you're calling a choice.
Okay, I'm wondering how this disproves God's existence.
No, we caught off into the discussion of free will. You were asking about my position.
Okay.
We got into that. Let me ask you another question. Is God unchanging?
Unchanging as far as his nature, yes.
So how does an unchanging being do something like make a decision to, say, create a universe?
Okay,
Wouldn't he change in that case?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean his nature is unchanging. Meaning all of his attributes are the same. His holiness, his
knowledge.
Sure, his.
But
his
wouldn't
wisdom,
that
none
have
of
to
those-
change? So to make a choice, you have to think about it and then act on it, and then you know that it's then actualized once you've done that. So wouldn't God, in making that sort of choice, have to change?
It doesn't mean that he has to change. It just means he chooses to act. And again, you recognize the fact that he knows what he's going to do before he does it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
But
it's
then
not
at some
change-
moment,
it's
he
not-
chooses to act. Isn't that choosing to act a moment of change? I mean, something's got to happen in God. I mean, at one point he's not acting.
But his
at the
act-
next
his-
point he's making the choice, and then the next point he's acting.
His attributes don't change. In other words, he's always good, always loving, always holy.
So God himself
always-
does change.
Always just.
Okay.
Anything that anything that he does is good, just, and holy. His holiness, justice, goodness doesn't change. That's his nature.
So his knowledge isn't part of his nature?
His knowledge is part of his nature.
But that
It's not that he's
changes.
gaining knowledge. He has all knowledge.
But it must change. He's got to know at some point that he's making a choice.
Him acting doesn't mean he's changing.
His knowledge of his acting must be changing. If he's
Why?
acting, he's changing. So wouldn't his knowledge of his acting have to be changing?
Not at all. If he knows, like you just posited before, that I'm going to raise my left hand before I raise my left hand, he knows it. He knows what he's going to do tomorrow. That doesn't mean he's changed. How is he changed?
How is God free if he knows what he's going to do tomorrow?
Because he's able to do whatever he wants to do.
Whatever he wants to do?
According to his nature, God can't lie. He can't make a one-ended stick. He can't make a square circle. He can't
Why
make
not?
a rock.
Why can't God do those things?
Great question.
Yeah.
And here's when I'm talking about God's omnipotence, that means he has all power. God can do anything that power can do. If power can make a square circle, God can make a square circle. If power can make a one-ended stick, God can make a one-ended stick. But I think the person who originally came up with that question had something going on in his mind. Because if the theist said God could make a square circle, he would say, ha, that's why I can't believe in your God. He contradicts himself.
Yep.
When I say God can't make a square circle, he can't contradict himself, the atheist says, ha, he's not all-powerful.
Yeah.
So the question is designed to trap God.
Yes.
But the problem is, have you ever seen a square circle?
Nope.
How would you know if God was wrong if he made one?
How would I know if God was wrong if he made one?
If you don't know what one looks like, how would you know he was wrong?
Wrong about what?
Square circle.
Wrong about it? So let me ask you this. If God is bound by the laws of logic, then he's still bound, isn't he?
Okay, you're positing that the laws of logic exist outside of God. The laws of logic are a reflection of God. In other words, the laws of logic flow from his nature. He is logical. You cannot account for the laws of logic in your worldview because you believe in a purely natural world. The laws of logic are not natural. They're immaterial. So when you use the laws of logic to try to disprove God, you're actually soaring off the branch on which you sit because your worldview can't account for the immaterial realm. And the God that gave you the immaterial laws of logic, the immaterial objective morality that we have, math.
So God can't break the laws of logic.
I didn't say, no, God cannot
So there's
break.
something that God can't do.
God cannot, God can't lie.
So there's
God
something-
can't create another
So there
God.
are things that God can't do. So he's not all powerful.
He can do anything that power can do.
So he's limited by power. He's still limited.
No, he's limited in his nature.
So he's
Okay.
limited.
I didn't say that he wasn't limited. I said he's all-powerful. You're taking all-powerful to mean he can contradict himself. In which case, you would jump on that and say, see, I can't believe in your God, he contradicts himself.
And that's the contradiction, right? I mean, that's
No,
the
it's
ultimate
not a
contradiction.
contradiction. I don't
Either
see
God
that.
is bound by the laws of logic, in which case he's not all-powerful, or he's not bound by the laws of logic, in which he can do contradictions, in which case he's an impossible being.
Okay. I was just given a note. There's another event coming in here at 9:30. We have to be out at 9:15,
Oh, wow.
which means there will be no time for questions,
Closing statements.
and your closing statements are cut from 10 to 7 minutes. I'm sorry, I just got the note.
That's so not cool, right?
No. Good exchange. That was really good,
Yes,
yeah.
Gary. Oh, we're gonna all right, well.
Okay, so each participant will have 7 minutes to close. This is tougher than they thought. They had 10 minutes, so they're cutting down to 7. Unfortunately, there'll be no question and answer.
Okay. We ready? Okay. Okay, tonight I've tried to demonstrate why I believe the theistic Christian worldview best reflects the reality of the world around us. Only theism can account for both a physical and non-physical reality. When atheists use immaterial things, it exposes the internal contradiction of their own worldview. It's self-refuting. We haven't heard any scientific rebuttal for causation of the universe. We haven't heard anything that would dispute order and a designer behind that order. Again, design comes from a designer and intelligence. Ethics and morality, Amy believes that happiness is the point of the worldview. The problem is, whose happiness? Mine, Hitler's, Stalin's, Pol Pot's. Whose happiness are we going to follow? In that worldview, might makes right, and that's a problem. Evil, as you heard tonight, isn't a matter of truth, it's a matter of taste. Morality is subjective, so evil is based upon the opinion of the person. If evil proves that God doesn't exist, what does good prove? Professor Amy wants you to believe that because evil exists, God doesn't. But removing him from the equation doesn't solve the problem. It makes it worse. If you take out God, evil still exists, the pain doesn't lessen, you remove any hope or explanation, and you remove any possibility of future justice. Without God, you cannot ground morality and determine what evil is in the first place. Worse, the evil that exists in an atheistic world will never ultimately be dealt with. To me, that is the real evil. I think the greatest evil in the world would be telling the lie that evil has no ultimate consequences. If you've lied, stolen anything, raped, killed someone, had a prejudiced or hateful thoughts, committed adultery, but they bring you personal happiness and then you die, no problem, no consequence. Please, please, please do not believe that. There is consequences, and true justice will be served in a world with a God. Again, I'm not claiming that Amy isn't happy or moral. What I'm claiming is that the evil actions of humanity cannot logically be refuted in her worldview. Okay, does that worldview line up with reality? Happiness is the byproduct of my worldview, not the point of it. If personal happiness is what you aim for, selfishness will be the result because self is the standard. And you will try to justify everything you do to fit that model and avoid responsibility and guilt. Personally, I think Jesus gets it right when he says, the world hates me because I testify about it that their deeds are evil. Look around. I think we have a long way to go in society. I see what Jesus said lining up with the reality of the world around me. Evil exists in the heart of humanity. We all like to say, wow, look at the evil outside those doors. Yet rarely we rarely look inside our own. I don't see any other religious figure ever really telling me like it is, ever telling me the truth of my own heart like Jesus does. The heart of the problem is the problem of the heart. Have you ever pointed your finger and accused someone of wrongdoing? He's a liar, only to be guilty of the very same offense. Have you pointed a finger at God and blamed him for evil, the evil committed by humanity, or maybe even the evil committed by yourself? I believe Jesus got it right when he said, love God and love your neighbor. If we can move in that direction and get that right, society will begin to look right. You will begin to rightly fulfill the purpose for which you are made. You are not random. You are created in the image of God and have infinite worth and value. You have the appearance of design because you were designed. Chance acting on time plus matter cannot create a person of intrinsic worth and value. Only God can do that. You are worth more than a bug, a bird, or a bonsai tree. Based on the periodic table, an atheist might say, you're just a whole lot of matter. But as a Christian theist, I'd say, you just matter a whole lot. More than you think. You are more than just a bag of elements or primordial soup. In my worldview, every person is of infinite value, created in the image of God. They derive their dignity and worth from him. My goal is not tolerance. My goal is love. I respect and appreciate Professor Amy, even though I disagree with her worldview. She is of infinite value to God. In my worldview, we help the needy, protect the defenseless, comfort the outcast. We believe in sacrifice, which does not equate to my own personal happiness. I sometimes forego my happiness for the sake of someone else. It's called sacrifice. The goal of my worldview is truth and understanding the reality of the world around me. When you find truth, you don't change it, it changes you. Theists are usually the ones labeled as closed-minded. Are you open-minded or closed-minded tonight? If you're open-minded and you use thoughts, logic, reason, math, and morality, things that only exist in an immaterial realm, will you open yourself up to the possibility of an immaterial God that provided all that for you? Remember, in a material world, if this is all you have, this is all you get. Can physical matter produce non-physical consciousness? Does matter produce a mind, or does mind produce a matter? For the naturalist materialist, the best things in life are just things. For the theist, the best things in life are not things at all. Tonight I've tried to put a pebble in your shoe and get you to think seriously about the reality of the world around you. My job is to give you a reason for the hope that lies within me with gentleness and respect. I hope I've done that, and I apologize if I was abrasive or too strong in my presentation. I'm passionate, and sometimes it comes out with emotion. My goal is to pursue truth wherever it leads. Jesus claimed to be that truth, and so far as I can see, I think he got that right. He has given me the best insight and most accurate picture of reality than anyone else. In the end, I agree with what C.S. Lewis said. I believe in Christianity as I believe the sun has risen, not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else. So thank you again for your time this evening. We have a gift up here for you at the table at the end of Q&A, but we don't have Q&A. So please come up and get your gift, and if you have additional questions, thank you for your time.
right, so what I've done here tonight in arguing in support of atheism is, if the Bible is correct, something that should be punished by stoning me to death and having this entire town burned to the ground. Of me and anyone who says that God doesn't exist, the Bible says, "Thou shalt surely kill them, thine hand shall be the first upon him to put him to death, and afterwards the hand of all the people. And thou shalt stone him with stones that he die, because he hath sought to thrust thee away from the Lord thy God." And with Brookville, New York, and LIU Post, you should burn it to the ground. You must put the inhabitants to the sword, lay it under the curse of destruction. No atheist text in the name of atheism calls for the death of anyone speaking out against theism, against atheism. No atheist text requires that followers of atheism must burn an entire town to the ground and kill the person who speaks against atheism. But the Bible, the core of Western religion, the assumed source of morality, requires that you should stone me to death and burn this town to the ground. If you think that the Bible is the ultimate source of the morality, and you also hold the belief that it's wrong to kill me for claiming to be an atheist, then you hold contradictory beliefs. As a rational person, you should give up one of those beliefs. You must either give up the belief that the Bible is the ultimate source of morality, or you must give up the belief that it's immoral to kill me. Now, I really, really hope that you will not give up the belief that it's wrong to kill an atheist. But if you are going to maintain consistency in your beliefs, you're going to have to give up the belief that the Bible is the word of truth and the ultimate source of morality. And if you insist on holding the belief that I should not be killed and that the belief that the Bible is the ultimate source of morality, then it seems that you have a worldview that goes against reason. And if you think it's possible to pick out the passages from the Bible that correctly preach morality, then you're essentially cherry-picking through the Bible to find the things that you already know are right. In other words, you're using your own moral compass and not the Bible as the ultimate source of morality. But that's okay. People know that hurting an innocent person is bad, and everyone in this room knows that without having to consult the Bible. No rational person could ever hold the belief that an innocent person deserves to be hurt. But we don't need God to tell us that. In fact, if you refrain from hurting a person just because God has told you that not to hurt people, then you're not acting morally. You're just obeying God's commands. But if you act as an atheist does, and you help another person just because you know that it's the right thing to do, then, and only then, are you acting morally. You see, atheists are not, by their very nature of being an atheist, immoral. In fact, they may be the only people out there who act in a genuinely moral way. So one thing I'd hope to do here, to accomplish here tonight, was just to show you that the atheistic worldview cannot be rejected merely on the basis that it's an immoral or pessimistic theory, because really it's neither. In recent studies, the sociologist Phil Zuckerman found that compared to religious people in the US, atheists are less nationalistic, less prejudiced, less anti-Semitic, less racist, less dogmatic, less ethnocentric, less closed-minded, less authoritarian. And in US states with the highest percentage of atheists, the murder rate is lower than average. In most religious states, the murder rate is higher than average. So atheists are not bad, miserable, pessimistic, lonely people. Atheists can lead happy, good, productive lives. It's part of what I wanted to get across here tonight. But I'm also here for another reason. You see, what we discussed here tonight, the atheist worldview versus the theistic worldview, is not just a topic for the classroom or lecture hall, not just a topic for church or temple or mosque. It's something that affects every part of our lives. We sometimes forget, living up here on the East Coast, that there are other areas of the country that have a very different view, and the majority of those beliefs are religious. In a recent Gallup poll, it was found that 85% of Americans believe that heaven exists. Only 12% of Americans believe that life on Earth is the result of evolution without the help of any God. 35% of Americans are creationists. That is, 1 of 3 Americans believe that the entire universe was created 6,000 years ago, which is, as Sam Harris points out, about the same time that Sumerians were created glue. Now, you might think that we live in a society that's based upon the separation of church and state, and so there's no reason to worry about the way that the predominant theistic worldview could affect our government. But did you know that every day that the government was shut down, Congress prayed to God for help in ending the shutdown? The members of the Christian right and the Tea Party, as well as one of our U.S. Supreme Court justices, Antonin Scalia, have openly stated that divine authority should play a significant role in government. In a recent interview, Scalia actually even claimed that he believes that the devil exists and that Satan's going around getting people to become atheists. So although 70% of Americans think it's important for presidential candidates to be strongly religious, and no one can get elected to an office as an openly atheistic person, it's okay that members of Congress think that religion should play a role in government. I'm also very much concerned about the way that the theistic worldview can result in bad policy and bad decision-making, especially in government. It worries me that the Christian right is working so hard to prevent poor, young women from being able to choose to have an abortion, even if her life is in danger. It's troublesome that so many in government operating on a theistic worldview support removing comprehensive sex education and teaching of evolution from public schools, and support getting creationism, school-sponsored prayer, and abstinence-only sex education in those schools. It bothers me that the previous administration, in the name of theism, prevented research facilities and universities from conducting stem cell research, even though it's clearly a path towards curing some of the worst diseases and conditions. It's hard to believe that 37 states have laws preventing criminal prosecution of parents whose children die because the parents have chosen to withhold medical care from the children on religious grounds. It's very much affecting the well-being of each and every one of us that 48 states have laws that exempt children from vaccinations on religious grounds. And finally, it's just plain wrong for the many politicians acting in the name of the theistic worldview to try to prevent equal rights to homosexual couples. I worry about the way that the theistic worldview affects other people who don't necessarily agree with it. The Christian right has influenced laws that put our children at risk, that prevent the research that could ultimately save the lives of many, many people, that openly discriminate against the poor and non-heterosexuals, all in the name of religion, all on the basis of the theistic worldview. The atheistic worldview does not set out to discriminate, doesn't attempt in the name of atheism to prevent the innocent or minority from having equal rights and protection under the law. As a humanist theory, the atheist worldview is very much concerned with the rights, health, and well-being of every individual. Unlike the atheist worldview, the theistic worldview is contradictory and irrational. And as I explained in my opening statement, holding contradictory beliefs results in bad decision-making. The theistic worldview, then, is not just some innocent set of beliefs of which we should all be tolerant. Cloaked as such, it is just plain dangerous and bad for all of us. Because its beliefs are contradictory, the theistic worldview should be rejected and should be prevented from having such a strong influence in our society. So I'd like to thank you for coming tonight, and hopefully some of this set in. If you found anything here that you thought was contradictory, it would be enough to reject at least one theistic belief, if not the entire theistic worldview. For there's no doubt that the more people who reject the theistic worldview, the better off we'll all be.